Michael, tell us a little bit about what you guys at AmCham learned from the Secretary of State. You did get into the room with him yourselves for about 45 minutes.
That's right. So from our point of view, the meetings that Secretary Blinken had in Beijing couldn't have been better. So there was speculation that he would meet Qin Gang, the foreign secretary, but he met Qin Gang and Wang Xi, and of course he also met President Xi. So from our point of view, he had three of the three possible meetings, and of course the last one was a big signal to the business community and to the Chinese community that American business was welcome in China. So that was really important. One of the other things to us that was significant was that he did sit down with the business community. And so that was important because foreign secretaries of state don't always meet with the business community, but clearly business is top of mind for Secretary Blinken.
There is still a little confusion, though, given the amount of raids and detentions and difficulties we've seen for the business community in China operating and the types of things that you say the Secretary said. How do you make those two fit together?
Well, it's a good question. So, of course, for the past 3 years, one of the big challenges had been COVID and COVID zero because China had some of the largest restrictions on business and movement. And so we were pleased coming out of COVID zero that we could do business again. And then you're right, this spring, there have been raids on U.S. companies, foreign companies, which concerned us very much. Every year we do a survey of AmCham China member companies, and they told us for the past 3 years in a row, their number one pain point was U.S.-China relations. So if we can get U.S.-China relations stabilized, that will have a positive impact, hopefully, on companies. But it was very important to have Secretary Blinken here to say, number one, we want business to be stable, and number two, to make sure that he's pressing the Chinese on our behalf to make sure that it is a stable playing field.
There's been a lot of policy uncertainty, right, when it comes to the risk and cost of doing business. Just one of those things would be how you do due diligence as a company or as a researcher in China without kind of crossing the red line that has now been set. Is that something that you're expecting to gain more clarity on? Is that something that was raised?
Well, this is something that Secretary Blinken did raise, we understand, but we raise it on a regular basis. So the Chamber of Commerce regularly says to every Chinese government entity that will listen that if you want FDI, you have to allow companies to do due diligence. And there's been a lot of concern recently as the Chinese have started to consider all kinds of data to be national security data. And so the question that we've been raising to the Chinese government has been, what sort of data is national security? And you do have to allow due diligence companies to come and do due diligence on partners, potential M&A, to do supply chain due diligence. And this is where a few companies have gotten into trouble. And so we've continued to ask the question, some clarity on why are these companies being investigated and what does it mean? And again, it was nice to have Secretary Blinken here to help us press that message home.
There's a conversation around de-risking versus decoupling, right? And, part of it comes in, we've been having all of these sort of debates about friendshoring in the geopolitical climate that we're now operating in. Have you seen significant evidence of that de-risking or, diversifying from businesses that perhaps are no longer as committed to China in the longer term?
So for us, just to be clear, de-risking and decoupling really are two different things. Last year, U.S.-China trade was its largest two-way trade ever. And so certainly the two economies are combined. We do believe companies want to de-risk their relationship with China. And so when we ask companies in our last annual survey, is China a place that's your number one top investment destination or within your top three, it was the first time on record that the majority of companies had said China was not the destination for foreign investment. It was not their number one or even their top three investment destination. So certainly companies are saying they're re-looking at where they are de-risking their supply chains, absolutely. The number of companies who say they're going to stay here is still the majority. So more than 70% of companies said right now they're not looking to move their supply chains outside of China. But absolutely the last couple of years, particularly last year, the Shanghai lockdown, when things were locked down for 2 months, certainly made companies rethink their supply chains and want to de-risk.